Get Fucking Real show. Strap in as your host Lisa Cherney takes you on a ride full of GFR moments. From powerful messages to exclusive interviews to untold stories of super shitty moments before big successes. And even real-life confessions. Lisa's been mentoring millionaire entrepreneurs for over 20 years, coaching top coaches and tapping her mighty woo-woo side to mentor the best of the best spiritual peeps. It's time to bring on the straight talk from successful, soulful entrepreneurs, inspiring you to live without regrets, to create your legacy, and be unapologetically you. And now, it's time to GFR.
Life is too short to be a slave to your own dream, 'cause I'm working too hard and I want to feel so alive. I jump out of bed because I love my life. Living on my terms, I know that I will thrive. Being myself, clarity will love rock. So I'll sit down and be J-U-I-C-Y. Sit down and be J-U-I-C-Y.
Hello. Welcome to the GFR show. I'm your host, Lisa Cherney. If this is your first time here, I'm thrilled that you found your way here. And maybe it's because of today's guest. Maybe it's just because that is where you were guided. Either way, it is meant for us to be in this conversation together. So here, we always like to kick things off with a question that kind of helps us get into the whole vibe of the show. So here's the question. How old were you when you learned how precious life is? For me, I immediately know the answer, and it's when my mom went through her breast cancer journey when I was a junior in high school. So I guess I was like 16, and which is my daughter's age now. That's an interesting thing to notice. And she survived and went on to live 35, 40 more years later. And it inserted, I always say, it kind of implanted a chip in me that always reminded me life was short. And it guided a lot of my life decisions that for many were done on the young side, if you were to judge it from the outside. Like, after 10 years in corporate from the age of 18 to the age of 28, I left corporate and started my own business, even though I had no clue what that was going to be, but I knew I needed to leave. I also got married young at the age of 23 after we got engaged after 3 months. And we just knew. I just think I had the courage to trust that. I wasn't looking for a husband at the time. It was sort of the furthest thing from my mind, but met my hubby, and we are celebrating over 27 years of marriage. And my mom did introduce me to him, so that's a whole other Oprah. That's a great story, actually. I'll tell it one day. And yeah, it's just guided a lot of my life decisions. And today's guest is such a wise woman, Jamaican born, and you'll hear in her a little bit of her accent, which I just love. Her name is Helen Macmillan, and she's an author, she's a life coach, she's a healer, and she's all about personal growth and healing and us achieving our greatest potential. She has a new book called The Gift of Pain, and she just is like, pain is awesome! Getting triggered is awesome, and it's just everything. And it's so refreshing because we do spend so much of our lives running from pain or covering pain or avoiding pain. And I definitely have been on a journey multiple times in my life with physical pain and really diving into the relationship around that. So I told her that I'm going to read her book, and I don't say that lightly because I'm not like a prolific reader, and I'm actually looking forward to diving into Helen's book. What else do you need to know about her? Well, she combines her intuitive gifts and her practical expertise and wisdom gained from building 3 successful businesses, being married twice, and raising 3 boys. She says all while maintaining her sanity. And she shares with us a very pivotal point in her life where she learned how precious life is. And I'm going to let her share that with you, but she was 19 years old and a sophomore in college. And I just found myself having so much just love and compassion for that young woman. It brought me to tears because as many of you know, I'm in the grief process from the death of my mom a few months ago, and I just am so in tuned and curious even about what grief looks like and what it looked like for that 19-year-old girl, and she shares with us in depth how pivotal that was for her. Oh, and I wanted to mention that for our GFR squad members, Helen does a bonus training of her quick shift process, and she uses me as a guinea pig. So I actually share about a challenging situation that I'm dealing with, and she takes me through her amazing process. And it was so perfectly timed for me and really, really powerful. So if you're in the GFR squad, you want to jump over to our GFR squad Facebook group and catch that bonus training. And if you're not, and you're like, oh, that sounds fun, or I'm curious about that, or I want to hang out with Lisa Cherney and the GFR people, then please join the squad. It's only $20 a month, and you can cancel anytime. And you get to hang out with us on our community confession call, where each month we take one of the GFR commandments and we talk about it and we confess, and it's a beautiful space. So without further ado, I cannot wait for you to meet Helen Macmillan. Helen, welcome to the GFR show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited for this, and it's funny because we go way back. We figured out till 2010 when you saw me speak at Lisa Zasovich event, who's one of our prior guests on the show. And it was our connection, and social media does sometimes come in handy because it was your comments on my post about my grief sabbatical that I took in September that just, I don't know, there was something about, I don't even remember what you said exactly, but it was just like, oh, Helen, she should be on my show. And then I went to check out your posts and saw about your new book, The Gift of Pain. And I was like, well, somebody who writes a book on the gift of pain is going to have some good stuff for the GFR show.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm excited to dive into all that you are that we can cover, in our time together and your journey. And I think it is such a well-earned phase when we can get to the place where we, see the gifts of pain, where we value that. And I think really underneath, not even so far underneath, the intention of the show is to normalize pain, is to say this is part of our journey, is to say, particularly for people that are in mission-driven businesses, that are coaches and mentors and teachers and therapists and, all of that is what has us be who we are, and often and even inspires us. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. My whole reason for writing this book is really to help people shift their perspective on pain. Because what I know is that when traditionally we're taught that pain is bad, and we try to avoid pain. We do a lot to avoid pain.
Yes, we do.
There are whole industries built on helping us avoid pain.
That's for sure.
And I know that when we view something as bad or wrong, we resist it. And, I'm sure you're familiar with the old Buddhist saying, what you resist persists, right? So, and the way we respond to it is dictated by that, our perception, our perspective on it. So that was the whole point. It really is, because sometimes just that shift and a willingness to embrace pain and to not necessarily see it as bad can actually cause it to not be painful at all.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. By the time the show airs, I will have done a free retreat that I call the Marketing Reset Retreat. And the very first step is in claiming what we see as failures of marketing efforts and investments and things in the past. Because I just feel like there's so much baggage that it really paralyzes people from putting themselves out there the way that they really want to, so that they can actually really help people. So I wholeheartedly agree with how that manifests in creating resistance in our business.
For me, I know this perspective as I, see what other people do and what I do, I was a lot quicker to let what was not working go and move on. If I made a sizable investment, I remember at one point making a sizable, it was like a $6,000 investment in some copywriting, and it just wasn't right. It wasn't right. It wasn't for my audience. Just the person just didn't get it, and I was like, okay, next, move on, let go, not using that. Let's go find somebody else who can move on. And certainly when I first started my journey, that would not have been the case. I would have been throwing all kinds of time and money and emotional investment after that, right? But that's actually something my mother taught me. I'm very grateful for. Yeah, it was years ago I made an investment in a business. And it was, it was right. And it was quickly into it that I saw that this was not going to work. And I asked for my money back, and she said no. And we hadn't even signed an agreement yet. Lesson learned, right? Paid over money before we signed an agreement. And I remember I was so angry, I could not sleep properly for 3 months. It was keeping up at night for 3 months. And my mom said to me, Helen, I was like, I'm going to hire a lawyer, I'm going to sue her, and I'm going to do this. And, very American way.
She gave you the Jamaican way.
She gave me the Jamaican way. She said the time and the emotional effort and the money that you're going to use to try and get that back, if you let go and focus on what you're doing, you're going to And I did. It was a wonderful piece.
Now, you mentioned like when you first started your business versus where you are now, and the way that you kind of let things go, they're not working. Was there like a turning point or something that just like flipped a switch and you're like, that's it? Those old ways, of holding on to things are not working. I'm going to be more in flow. Or was there something that you can kind of point to?
That particular incident with that business investment was a huge one. That was the huge one for me because I lived through it, right? Like there's nothing worth losing 3 months of sleep. Honestly, I sleep very well now. Thankfully, it's a blessing. And so that I saw the toll that it was taking on my mental health, my physical health. And I was like, what on earth can you do? So that probably right there was a huge turning point. I'm trying to think if there's, I'm sure there have been more. But actually, you know what? There were different ones. There was one I'm thinking of now with an investment I made in a coaching program, actually. And I was communicative after a while because it was my husband who said, you're investing the equivalent of like a mortgage money every month. This person is working for you. You need to ask for what you need instead of complaining. And because I was doing a lot of complaining to the wrong people. I'm sure you can't relate, right?
No, never, ever. I've never done that.
And so that was another piece of great advice he gave it. And so I started communicating, and I really have to say she tried so hard to give me what I needed. And it just wasn't working. I think I wasn't a good fit in the first place, and maybe she shouldn't have let me into her program. So I said, please let me out. I don't, I'm not going to, I can see, you and I both can see. And she did let me out of the program. And then other people wanted out as well who were struggling, and she was like, no, because they hadn't been communicative. They hadn't been trying. They hadn't been. So,
right.
Yeah, different to let go. Let go has been I've gotten that lesson in so many ways in my life, to let go, to learning when to let go. All of that Kenny Rogers, that song, you got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run. So I think that's a part of wisdom, learning wisdom, is when to let go.
So you shared with me one of the very first profound experiences you had with the idea of letting something go, or like the preciousness of life, and sort of like how to navigate that. Can you share with us that story?
Sure. That was when my sister died in a car accident. born 14 months apart. And as a matter of fact, my mom didn't, she was a nurse. And so, you know, supposedly she's supposed to know about, you know, getting pregnant and those things. But anyway, I was the third child, and she got pregnant with me when my sister was only 5 months old. And so she didn't tell anyone. She was ashamed. She didn't tell anyone she was pregnant with me until she started to show at about 7 months.
Oh my goodness.
It's a whole nother story, but I was born with a lot of shame you absorb sometimes in the womb, right? So anyway, so my sister and I were very close in age, and so they used to dress us alike. We, you know, same dress, different color, same hairstyle, you know. We were always together, we roomed together, we were very close.
Was she with you at college?
No, she actually went to college in Jamaica. She was an artist. She was in her final year doing jewelry design at the Jamaica School of Art. And I was at Howard University. And she was on the way to the beach with friends. And they think maybe it was a tourist because the road that they were on is wide with then big side, I can't remember what they call it.
Side rails.
No, there's no rails or anything like that. But you have the paved part of the road, and then you had additional
like the shoulder.
Like shoulders, yeah, very wide shoulders. So there was plenty space for cars to pass, you know. But I guess they were speeding, so was the other car, and it was around a corner, and the car came around the corner on their side of the road. So that's why we think it was a tourist, because we drive on the left in Jamaica.
Oh.
And yeah. They swerved to avoid the car and ended up there's a light post, and there are these small posts that anchor the wooden light posts. It's attached by a wire and then to a small rattle. I mean, it's really small in diameter, but they slid sideways into it and it cut the car almost into it. And so she died on the spot, and there were 3 other friends in the car with her, and the one who was sitting behind her on that side, he eventually died at the hospital, and the other 2 were badly injured. So that was definitely a watershed moment in my life.
I cannot even imagine being, I guess, a senior in college.
Oh, I wasn't even a senior. I was a sophomore.
Oh, that's right. Because she was a year. Yeah, she was a year.
Yeah.
You were a
and that was a
sophomore.
2 year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And got a call from your parents.
Well, it's funny. I'm very intuitive, always have been. Buried it for a long time because who wants to be different as a child? I used to see things and hear things that other people didn't. So I learned to suppress that. But the week before, 4 days before, actually, the whole week before, I was depressed. I was down. I was at college, and I remember calling home the Thursday, and she answered the phone, and we were chit-chatting because I was feeling really down all week, and for no obvious reason. And my mom picked up the phone after we'd been talking for about 20 minutes, because of course, good college student, I call home collect, of course.
Right.
And my mom said, I'm paying for this call, so y'all need to hang up now. And I did something I'd never done before. I called right back on my dime, which was very limited at that point in time. And we talked for about maybe another 10 or 15 minutes. And she died 4 days later. And I kept saying to her, I want to come home. I just want to come home. I don't want to be here. It's cold. I don't want to come. She said, don't be silly. Finish your school. Do your schoolwork. You'll be home at Christmas. Because this was in October. And yeah, so it's one of the things that also taught me not only to value how precious life is and how fickle, you know, how quickly it can just end. We never know. But to honor my intuition, to honor that, because there was no good reason for what I did. And of course, since then, it's proven out so many times. But that was one of my first real lessons in listening to that gut feeling, even when it doesn't make sense. So I actually left the day after. I was still so depressed. I skipped my physics exam on Friday and took a plane to West Virginia because my boyfriend that's where he was at school, and I went to spend the weekend with him. And so I was there with him on Sunday when we got the news, which initially they only said that she'd been in a car accident. He knew she was dead, but my mom had said, don't tell me that she was dead. Let me come home first. Stupid idea.
Oh my gosh. So your boyfriend knew she was dead.
Well, he eventually told me. He eventually told me because by then I was like, oh, I couldn't get a flight out to West Virginia that night. It was like small town West Virginia. So I booked my flight out the next morning, but I was found all after. I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to stay as long as she needs while she's in the hospital, help her to rehab, because I was studying physical therapy, right? So I'm thinking, I can help her rehab.
Yeah.
And about 7 p.m. the night, he said he just could not see me he couldn't one more minute let me go on believing, because he saw how hopeful I was and all the things I was saying. And he said, I need to tell you something, sit down. She's dead. And I was like, no, she's not. Why on earth would you say something like that? And so I called my brother, who was at our apartment in Washington, D.C., where I lived. And I said, is it true? Is she dead? And he said, Helen, this is not the time to be hysterical. People react so strangely, right?
By you asking that question, you were being hysterical?
I guess the way, of course but it's a perfect time to be hysterical. Right. What are you talking about?
Yeah, is there any other more perfect time? Yes.
Exactly. So, yeah. So that's how I found out. And I hit the floor. My knees just gave way and I hit the floor. It was a tough time. It was a tough time. Yeah.
It was like you were twins almost.
Yes, we were. We were kind of, I guess they call them Irish twins. I don't know, when you're born really close together and
that's
you
right.
do everything together. Yeah.
So, and because I'm in a grief journey myself, my mom passed away at the end of May and we were super connected. So I am quite intrigued about grief and just the grief journey and the impact on our lives and how these things tend to, have us go in different directions or transform or just, right? I mean, I know we're aligned in like everything happens for a reason, and really looking at all those things. So, I mean, it's sort of almost kind of a silly question. Obviously, it did impact you in a huge way. I can answer that part for you. I guess my question is like, what were the immediate shorter term, like within, a year or two? How did that impact that young woman? And then how you think it's still impacting you today?
The immediate thing was I had this urgency to live. Like I didn't care anymore. So I did what I want. I'm pretty sure that's why I got married so young. I got married. We've been going out for like 5 years, 6 years. And so I got married at 21. Yeah. So within 2 years, right? Before I even finished college. And I think another immediate, it started my journey of reawakening to all the things that I had repressed. It would be a long time coming, but I think the journey began. I began to try to understand, make sense of life. Like, why are we here? And of the things that don't seem to make sense. Like, to me, my brain couldn't understand why something like that happens. She had so much life to live, and yet at the other hand, it brought a lot of it caused us to have really honest conversations with each other as a family, because my parents were already separated and I think it really just set me free on another level to do what the heck I want, just because I want, because you don't know how much time you have. So there was a level of freedom that it gave me. And then now, as an adult, much later on, I think all of those things compounded. Now, there was an ongoing journey to set myself free on many different levels, and then turning around and helping others to set themselves free.
Yeah, my
shitty.
It's
Which
so
is
weird
ironic.
It's so weird that you say that, because that is like the quote I say all the time. I'm a very low tolerance for not feeling good, is what I say.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. Yes, and I've never heard anybody say anything close to it, but that was, yes, wow, like that is there. There's multiple things you've said that really feel like, you have similar lived experiences, in some ways, or at least similar conclusions from our lived experience.
Yes.
So you have a very low tolerance for, what did you say?
Feeling shitty.
Feeling shitty, right? And I said not feeling good. It's so funny. See, that's
Which
why
is ironic because I suffered from depression for many, many years, but I wore many masks. I'll talk to friends from high school who, I remember running into an acquaintance and we got together maybe about 5-6 years ago, and we were talking about our high school years, and we were acquaintances at school, but we didn't really socialize much outside of school. And she said to me, I was telling her my story, she's like, "Oh my God, Helen." She's like, "I would never have guessed. You always were so happy and so outgoing." I said, "Yeah, that's why I can see people's masks like that. Because I was an expert." Because people don't have a lot of tolerance for when you're mad or sad or depressed. Other people don't have a lot of tolerance. It makes them uncomfortable.
Yes.
So I learned very quickly to hide that.
So the death of your sister, did it somehow break the spell of your depression?
It actually sent me, it's interesting because I've been toying with the idea of suicide for years. And it was a fleeting moment because I was depressed, right?
Yeah, and I think depression kind of just comes with suicidal ideation in most cases.
Exactly. And so it kind of pushed me over the edge and made me act on it. And I tried to commit suicide. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Which is
'cause
great.
the way I worded my question was like, it either breaks the spell or it pushes it to the extreme, which then eventually
Which then breaks the
also
spell.
break the spell. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you tried
Exactly.
to commit suicide. Yeah. That
Yes.
makes, I mean,
Yes.
I could see how, and I guess any mind, particularly a depressed mind, given that circumstance.
Yeah. And there were things, it gives you, as I say, I write about this in my book, but one of the ways I say it is the opportunity was there because the doctor had given my mom Valium to help us get through the funeral and all that good stuff, right? So when I had an argument with my dad, God knows what that day, but it didn't take much. It was the thing, and my mom was away having a break after my sister's funeral. And the battle was there. The opportunity was there. It doesn't take more than a moment to make that decision. And so gratefully that my best friend was also there and realized and was able to call my brother and they rushed me to the hospital. But I literally, when I woke up the next morning and realized I was still alive, I was so pissed off. I was really pissed off. I pulled the IV out of my arm and the nurse was pissed. I'm screaming at her, she's screaming at me, and I'm like, I didn't want to be here. No, thank you for saving my life. So,
did you take some time off college?
I did. Well, I only took off the rest of that semester. And so I went, which was probably not such a good idea because back then, this is 41 years ago now, right? So back then, nobody thought it was a good idea to send me to a psychiatrist. I think now, like, what the hell, really? What were they thinking, right? But we just didn't do that. So then I go back to school and I'm living alone in an apartment because my cousin has graduated, my brother moved back home. And so, I would have weeks where I'd be like in my apartment, didn't bathe, just smoked. I used to smoke cigarettes at the time. Smoke, watch TV, skip classes. I was depressed. So I would never try to commit suicide again because of something my mother said to me. And she said, would you take my most favorite expensive silk dress and cut it into shreds with a pair of scissors? And I didn't know where she was going with this. So I was like appalled. I was like, absolutely not, Mom. I would never do that. And she said, don't you think you mean more to me than a dress?
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Even for years when things were hard and I would still think about committing suicide, I knew I would never attempt it again.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm just really feeling this young woman. Oh, my heart is with her so much. Oh my gosh. I mean, just think, look, with my mom and that grief journey, and like I have 51 years of sort of, self-discovery and like my own journey, to be able to at least kind of know what the fuck is happening with me, and knowing enough that I need to take some fucking time off, and that I just at least being able to observe myself somewhat to know what I need. And I just feel so much for that young woman in college with her family in another country and boyfriend far away, and oh my goodness.
Yeah. It really helped me to learn. This is where I know that everything soars, because one of the things I learned to ask, and I teach my clients the same thing, to ask what's right about this that I might not be seeing, right?
Ooh, what's right about this that I might not be seeing?
Yeah. And it really forced me to rely on my soul, on my spirit, on the unseen help that we all have, that's always present for us, but that we don't always tap into.
Did you get more connected to your intuition and your other gifts and unique things about your experience? Did you lean on those more?
I certainly did. It certainly did, and wanted to know more about what happens after we die.
Yes.
Is there, because I wanted to know for sure that I would connect with my sister.
What's your sister's name?
Elizabeth. So, yeah, it was, and then many years later, I had a near-death experience when I was in China studying, and that was the real reawakening. That's where
girl, you're gonna have to tell us about that. Oh, and then I had a near-death experience in China. Okay, all right. I want a little bit more. Give us a little bit more if you're willing about that.
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
Sure. I was actually tired, and because my dad had died 2 weeks, we had buried him a week before I actually left, and I'd sold my car to pay for this trip. So, but I would not have gone.
How old were you now?
I was 30. I was divorced with 2 children, and so I was about 32, 33, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And wanted to study. What was it I wanted to study? They didn't have it I think I wanted to do the acupuncture or something, but they didn't have it available. There weren't enough people for whatever it was. And so I just really wanted to go to China. And I like to travel and I love to study. So then they both coincide. So I ended up studying Tuina, which is Chinese medical massage. Mm-hmm. And so it's a long haul from Jamaica to China. So I'd stopped over in Florida and spent a night or two with some friends, and she smoked, and I was already, tired from the whole journey of my father's illness and death. So I caught a cold, and then by the time I made it to China, like a few days later, I came down with a cold, a cough, fever, wasn't well. And we would go to the hospital, Guanmen Hospital in Beijing, in the day, and we all stayed at a hotel. It was a big group, American group. It was called China Medical Travel or China Educational Travel. That's what it was. It was so long ago. This was back in 1992. There was an acupuncture master coming to the hotel to give us a lecture. And so we got back from the hospital lecture that day, and I was coughing and I really didn't feel well. I said to my roommate, I'm going to lie down, wake me up when he comes. She woke me up later, said, okay, it's time, he's here. And I was like, really don't feel good, but I don't want to miss this. So I went over and we're all there, but we're waiting for the interpreter to come. She had gone out with some of the other members of the group. We couldn't talk to him. He couldn't start his lecture till she came back. And we're in there, and I said there was mostly massage therapists in the group from the US, but there was one other physical therapist. And I had said to her, boy, I don't feel well. I'm just going to lie down here on the bed till she gets here. And she asked me some questions, and I didn't have enough breath to finish the sentence. And both of us were kind of like, what's happening here? Because it wasn't presenting like a typical asthma attack. And I'd never had an asthma attack before in my life. So she goes, my God, I think you're having an asthma attack. So I'm lying there on the bed, really thinking, it's really going to be hard for my mom to get my body back to Jamaica from China. But I'm glad I saw everybody at my dad's funeral a few weeks ago. And because I literally feel that like I am going to die. I have no breath. And suddenly the interpreter bursts into the room and they're like, chit chat. And I hear she was a little half Chinese American woman from Colorado. And actually, all I heard was her voice on the top. She was like, she is dying over here. And everybody just went quiet. And she said, tell him he needs to treat her right now. And the interpreter told him, he came over, stuck needles in my body. And in 15 minutes, I was fine.
Oh my God.
Fine. When I tell you, from like dying to fine. It blew my mind.
My God.
I went on to study acupuncture for pain relief later on.
Needless to say.
I'm a great believer in acupuncture.
Oh my God.
But that was the day of this. So she said to me after that, she said, if you ever have another attack while we're here, her son was with us on the trip. She said, I have some prednisone. So just hit me up if you need any. A couple of days later, we were at the hospital, came home on the bus, and I could feel myself wheezy. And so I went over to her. She was talking to 3 other women in the hotel lobby, and I said, I need the prednisone. And I could barely talk. And they were all there watching what he did. So immediately, they just all immediately started giving me acupressure to the points they had seen him put the needles in. And we moved like a unit into the elevator, up, down the hall to her room, got into her room, and I sat down and took the prednisone. And I couldn't have taken effect yet. I literally was like, I am so tired, I need to lie. And they're like, no problem. They moved over to the bed. They're still touching my body. And I remember lying there thinking, I wonder if these ladies, because I don't really know them, we've just been together a few days, I said, I wonder if they know Reiki, because I could feel the energy pouring from their hands into my body. And all of a sudden, I was above them, looking down at them around my body. And was one of the women, she always had she was stimulating a point right over my heart in the center of my chest. And she said to me, where are you? And I said, I'm above you. Just very matter of fact, it was so weird. And she said, don't go too far. And later on, I would ask them, how did you know I had left my body? And all of them said, your body went ice cold. And I guess intuitively, I don't even know if she wanted to tell me don't go too far, whatever. But I went through this whole experience, went through a tunnel, ended up hovering over a city that I thought was Manhattan, but it turned out to be Shanghai because we went there the following week. And when we drove in, I was like, oh, it was here. And I re-experienced so many past lives I'd had in China. And it's funny because my best friend in Jamaica, she is Chinese Jamaican. I always love Chinese everything. Chinese food is my favorite food. I love all things Chinese. And she loves all things, so we always tease each other. We're born in the wrong bodies. But yeah,
that's when you got some of your questions to come back around to when you first dropped that was my near-death experience. That's when you got some of your big questions answered about what happens when you die.
That it's not just that we have many lifetimes that we live. And of course, this was in the middle of what I call my born again phase of my life. So I was big into church at the time, and I was like, what the heck? Because there's no real explanation for that there. So it took me on my own journey. I had to ask, I had to go on my own journey of what is this? What does this mean? What I, it all started also that there was a whole purpose for that experience, but it was part of what was me. And when I came out of that experience, I physically looked different, number one, but number two, all of my gifts were back. Like I could look at you and know what you were feeling. It was horrible, by the way. It was like that for 3 weeks. I felt like I was on this planet and everybody else was on another planet. And I asked God to take it away. I said, take it away, I can't. And as I healed myself over the next maybe 10 years or so, they came back gradually. And as I could learn how to live with them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that story. I read Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters. Gosh, I can picture we were Child's Brand, so yeah, like 1998. How many years ago that is? And it just made such a huge impression on me. It's like one of those books where you just know it's like handpicked for you. And it just to me was like, of course. How can a young child fear water when they've never had any negative experience, or just how can you just, I mean, it just explains so much. So I definitely believe in him. And having this conversation with you is actually, I feel like I need to do some past life regression stuff. Yeah, I feel like, yeah. So I want to cover a couple things here in sort of like the last, this last segment. I feel like I'm supposed to ask you about when your depression really lifted. I just feel like there's a pivotal thing in your journey with that. And then I also want to hear like how all this led you to your current work that you're doing now, because, you were acupuncture, you were massage, you were more in the body work sort of, healing space. And so I just loved hearing my guest stories about kind of what had them really pop into the latest expression of their work. So, but first, if you could share with us
that experience right there, that awakening.
Yeah.
That's where the serious depression ended.
Interesting.
And thank you for asking the question and letting me think about it, because I didn't really think about it till just now.
Oh, okay. I love that.
I knew it was pivotal. But absolutely. Now, I think it's quite normal. Let me just say this, for people to get down, right? But I'm talking about like suicidal ideation, in the bed kind of depression, clinical depression. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we're highly functional though. So you're obviously highly functional. A lot of us doing so much pushing energy, so much.
I burned out so many times. Yeah, I burned out time and time again, because you keep pushing through and life just felt really hard, which is why I have an easy button from Staples on my desk, and I love to use it. I gave them as gifts. So that was really, that was the watershed moment with that. Continue. I will, and I won't tell you that I don't have days when I'm down. And my mom passed away, as you know, earlier this year in April, at the end of April. And so I took, my 1 month off turned into 4, because I went deep and gave myself the space and time to breathe and to feel my pain, and to feel the sadness and move through it. Because really the only way out is through, and get the help and support, because we don't have to get stuck in it. It's when we get stuck in it that it seems to go on forever. But as far as how I came to from the body work, I tell people I came to the mind through the body. It's how everything in my life has unfolded. I live my life in service to my soul. I follow my gut, I follow my instincts, and I was actually working in physical therapy here. And my work in Jamaica had evolved, my business had evolved into a complementary wellness center. I'm curious, and I always want to understand the root of what an issue is. And so I kept learning and studying, and places like the Appalachia Institute, somato-emotional release work, craniosacral, they just opened my mind to the energy work and the whole other, the mind body. And I had just moved to Maryland in 2008, and every summer I would go on a walkabout with my son, my youngest son, when he was up to middle school and elementary school. We were on a walkabout in Jamaica. We just went for 6 weeks, and I got an email from a woman who owned a wellness center in Maryland, and saying that she was looking for a life coach for her wellness center, and someone had recommended me. And I went, why? And I looked up and I went, okay, God, is that what I'm going to be doing next? So when I came back, I met with her and I said, look, I'm not a life coach, but I have all of these others. She was like, oh my God, you're a physical therapist, you're a massage therapist, you're this, you're that. Yeah, I want you. I said, but I am interested in life coaching, but I don't hang my shingle and say I do something unless I'm certified. So I'll go ahead and get certified, and in the meantime, I'll do this stuff. And so I did, and it opened a whole new universe to me that I did not know existed, called coaching. And it's been a wonderful opportunity to use all of my tools, all of my healing tools, all of my energy medicine tools, all of my life experience, everything, to work with the whole client, which I always did, which I always was coaching. I was like, I've been coaching my whole life. That's why I was such a good physical therapist. I was always working with their mind and their body.
Yes. And I could totally see why you liked GFR Commandment number 4, trust your struggle serves your mission. Because it really came full circle with this. Wow. I mean, so much of what you had experienced and so many of your gifts all in like one opportunity.
Yes, and I love all 12 of the commandments.
I know, it's hard to pick one.
You earlier, it's really hard to pick one.
Yeah, and I love everyone. She said that she picked the one that would have helped her younger self. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. If I could have understood that my struggle was serving my mission back then, maybe it would have made it a little easier, and maybe not, because truth is, there's certain things you just can't get till you get it.
It's true. I kind of almost feel like I have sort of like a parallel experience or belief system of like that if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have maybe experienced those things, but those things are who I am now, and exactly. so valuable.
Yes. Yeah, I would not. But people say, well, what would you, if you had to do it again, what would you do differently? And I go, nothing. Because then I wouldn't be who I am now. And I love who I am now. I appreciate and value every one of my experiences. And as I tell my clients, that's when you know you've truly healed something, when you feel nothing but gratitude for it.
Yes. And you said something profound earlier around you're quick to now stop what isn't working. To me, that's everything, right? It kind of goes along with we have a low tolerance for me not feeling good, for you feeling shitty. It's like, it kind of goes with that. It's all connected with that.
Yes. And to me, whereas before I'd wear the mask and I'd pretend to be happier than I was, now when I'm joyful, it's totally authentic, and I'm not afraid to not be joyful. That's totally authentic. Giving myself permission to feel and be the range. I used to make myself happy to make other people comfortable. And now it's like, I don't need to make you uncomfortable, but I don't actually need to take responsibility for how you feel at all.
Yes, amen. Yes. Okay, so I feel like I want to ask you for like a final thought.
What's coming to be shared is that for me, getting fucking expressing that, being that in the world, is you being the gift you came to give the world. It's the only way you give the gift you came to give. You are the gift you came to give the world. And so we got to strip away, unlearn, and relearn. One of my favorite quotes is from a book called Future Shock. It says, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write. It will be those who refuse to unlearn and relearn."
Oh, I love that. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. I have treasured this time with you, Helen. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being willing to go wherever our journey today was taking us. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a joy to be here.
Bye-bye for now. I mean, was that just like, that was so fun. I love how she just sort of like threw offhandedly about her near-death experience. I'm like, oh no, we got to go there. So she has some cool gifts for our community. And the first one is 1 week membership into her Journey to Self-Love program. And it sounds really jam-packed with what you get in your 1 week. And that is, you get a workbook and you get a tapping meditation that supports your mental, emotional, energetic shifts, and a video. And she's just so delightful. I would just love for you to have her in your life for at least a week. And we're also going to put a link in the show notes to her book, The Gift of Pain, for which she said she just recorded the audio. So I can't wait for that as well. And you heard her favorite GFR commandments number 4. If you haven't gotten your commandments, go to gfr.life/12C and join us in the GFR squad. And I know I'm asking a lot of you, but hey, if you had fun here, I want to make sure the fun keeps coming. And also subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to the show. If you're listening on my website, jump over to your favorite podcast listening app and look up the show GFR or the Get F ***ing Real Show, so you don't miss any of these amazing, inspiring, motivating interviews. All right. See you next time.